Good day folks, Sean here from Air Photography. So this is my beginner's guide for the new Insta360 X4. This beginner's guide is designed for those who have never used a 360 camera before. We're going to go over the hardware and the software to help you get the most out of your camera. Now if you haven't purchased one yet, there are several different packages that you can purchase, and basically it all dictates what kind of accessories come with it. You can purchase the camera just standalone, or you can get things such as ski bundles, snowboard bundles, motorcycle kits. So it just really depends on what you want to use your camera for. But no matter which bundle you decide to purchase, you can still follow along as the functionality of the camera remains the same. So basically when you purchase the basic kit, this is all the hardware you're going to get inside the box. You're going to get the camera itself, you're going to get some standard lens guards, you're going to get a charging and data cable, and you're going to get a protective case. Inside the case we have some pockets so you can store your lens guards and a few other small little items. Now it's very important when not using the camera to keep it stored in the case. As with 360 cameras we have protruding lenses and they can be very delicate. And in some scenarios it can be very important to use these lens guards to help keep the lens protected. Now ideally you don't want to use the lens guards on a regular basis as it will degrade the footage slightly. So that all becomes personal preference when you use them. To install the lens guards, you can see there's a blue dot there on the side, and you want to line that up to the side. When you twist them on to lock it, you want that blue dot facing down, and you just repeat those same steps for the other side. The other really important thing about 360 is you got to keep those lenses extremely clean. Any dust or debris on the lenses or fingerprints is really going to show in the footage, and that goes for the lens guards as well. You want to make sure they're nice and polished both on the inside and on the outside. Now when you do put the lens guards on, there is one extra step. You have to enable lens guards in the settings, which we'll take a look at here in a minute when we power the camera on. Now a few other basic accessories you may want to consider when purchasing the X4 to help you get the most out of it. The first thing is a spare battery. The X4 actually has pretty good battery life, but sometimes if you're going to be out filming a lot all day, sometimes having a spare battery is a beneficial thing. The other thing we have here is a lens protector, and basically when you're not using the camera, it just goes over the top just like that to keep the lenses protected, and that will fit over top with or without the lens guards installed. And probably one of the most important accessories to have to really make use of a 360 camera is an extension pole. Now depending on what bundle you bought, you may have one included with it. If you don't have one, you can purchase them separately. It doesn't have to be the Insta360 brand. Any extension pole that you add to the camera will be invisible. This is their carbon fiber one. It's probably one of my favorite ones to use. It's lightweight and it has a good amount of reach. At the top of the extension pole there's a 1/4-20 connector, and that just screws into the bottom of the camera. The other thing you may have to consider for your Insta360 X4 is memory. Some bundles do not include any memory, other bundles do. You can also purchase memory cards on the Insta360 website. Currently myself, I have a 512 gigabyte card inside. I would recommend a minimum of 128, if not 256. If you're going to be doing a lot of recording throughout the day, then you may want to consider a 512 card. And in a minute here, we'll take a look at how to install it. Now, before we continue, there's one thing I do want to show you is that if you have your camera installed on a selfie stick, you can still make use of this case. As you can see, you can just wrap it around the camera and then just zip it up like that. You can now throw this in a camera bag or set it down, and you don't have to worry about damaging the lenses. So let's go ahead here and we're going to take a look at the layout of the camera, and I'll explain what all the different buttons and ports are. At the front of the camera here, we have a LED light. That's going to signify when the camera's on. It's going to turn red when it's recording, so you know that it is indeed recording. If we flip it over to the other side, we have our preview. This is a touch screen. That's how we input all our settings and get a preview of what we're filming. We have another LED light down there at the bottom. Again, that one will turn red when recording. At the bottom here, we have two buttons. The one on the left-hand side is our shutter button. So that's how we stop and start recording, or we take a photo, or start another type of capture depending on what mode we're in. Beside that, we have a mode switching button. So that'll switch the different modes between capturing video, photos, hyperlapses, time lapses. You can cycle through all the different modes. And we'll take a closer look at those buttons when we fire the camera up. We have our power button, and below that we have a button that allows us to access presets. It sets the camera up for various activities, and you can go in and customize them, create your own activities. So it is a handy button to use, and again we'll take a look at that when we fire the camera up. On the other side here is where our ports are. This top door, if we press that tab up, you can see we have a USB-C port underneath it. That's how we charge the camera, but that's also how we can connect it to computers to transfer content. There are a couple different ways to transfer content, including wirelessly, and we will take a look at that later on in this video. Below that is our battery, and we can press those tabs to remove it. And inside the battery compartment is where we install the memory card. So this is the memory card that I have in it. It's an Insta360 brand, and it's 512 gigabytes of storage. You can use whatever brand that you prefer, as long as it's a nice fast card. The other brand I like to use is SanDisk, the Extreme Pros. So to install the memory, you're going to have the graphic facing the inside of the battery compartment. You're just going to put it into the slot there and just press it in until it clicks. For the most part, when it's installed, you never have to take it out again, unless you want to transfer content manually by taking the card out and putting it in a card reader. To reinstall the battery, just make sure the leads are facing the bottom of the camera and just press it in until it clicks. And one safety feature they have to make sure the camera remains waterproof, and this camera is waterproof all the way down to 10 meters. You can see if the battery's not seated correctly, you're going to see some orange there. So that'll go away once we clip it in properly. So it's a nice little safety feature. And the USB door has the exact same thing. You can see as I slowly push it in, it shows orange. That means it's not seated correctly. But as soon as I push it all the way in, that orange goes away. Now when it comes to charging the X4, they do include a charging cable, but one thing you'll notice did not come inside the box is a charging block. That kind of is standard across the board. Most companies don't include these anymore, which is okay for the most part because most of us have these laying around. You can use pretty well any type of charger if you have a charger for a smartphone or a tablet, basically anything that's USB-C. If you need to purchase one, there are a lot on Amazon that are available. The one that I use a lot is by Anker. I use this for multiple devices. And to charge the X4 up, you're just going to take your charging cable, plug it into your charging block, and then into the USB-C. I'm just going to use a longer cable here just so I can reach my plugs. You can see when we plug it in, we get a red light here signifying that it is charging. When it's fully charged, that light will go off. So at this point, we're going to fire up the camera and I'm going to show you some basic functionality of it. But before we can use it, sometimes these cameras need to be activated and there's firmware that needs to be updated. It's very important to update that firmware to make sure you have all the proper functionality of the camera. Now, in order to do that, we're going to need to download the Insta360 app. If you go to the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store, just search for Insta360 and it'll come up right away. The Insta360 app is compatible with multiple cameras, including the X4. It's a really powerful app. It can help you manage your content, keep your firmware and devices updated. But on top of that, it has some really powerful editing tools. The app is extremely easy to use. Most people pick it up really quickly once you've used it a few times. The Insta360 app is also compatible with tablets. Some people prefer to do their editing on a tablet. So at this point, I have the app running and we're going to power on the camera. To power it on, we're just going to do a quick press on the power button. You're going to see this light turn blue and that light turn blue, and it's going to go ahead and power on. And before we continue, I'm just going to show you how to power it off. To power it off, we're going to do a press and hold. So just a quick press to power it on and a press and hold to power it off. Now let's go ahead and we'll power it back on here. Now my camera has already had the firmware updated, so I can't demonstrate that for you, unfortunately. But basically at this point, you're going to want to connect it to the app. Now, if it's the first time you've connected a 360 camera or any camera to your app, most likely it's going to just prompt you to connect. If it doesn't, or it's wanting you to connect to an older camera, or it doesn't prompt you to do anything, just click on that camera button at the bottom, and right away it should come up to connect to the device. If it's listing the wrong camera, or perhaps an older camera that you've owned, you just press at the bottom there where it says connect to a different device, and then it's going to scan for any updated cameras in the area. So for me, you can see it's picked up my X4, so I'm going to hit connect. And the first time you go to connect it, it's going to ask you to confirm on the device. And that's a safety feature just so random people can't connect to your camera. So we're going to confirm it. And then it's going to ask us to join the Wi-Fi of the camera. And there we go there, it's now connected. Now, if this is the first time you're connecting and powering it on, right away it's going to prompt you to update the firmware and activate it if it needs to be activated. So just follow the on-screen instructions. It can take anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes to update the firmware, but again, it's very important to do. Now we are going to take a closer look at the app and how to use it coming up here in a bit, but for now we're going to take a look at the functionality of the camera. And I'm going to adjust the camera angle so we can get a closer look at the screen. Now, before we take a look at the functionality of the camera, I just want to explain a few things. There's two different ways in which we can capture with the Insta360 X4. The first is spherical mode. That means it's going to use both lenses and capture everything around us. The second way is single lens mode, and that's where it's going to act as a traditional action camera, where you're going to be recording from either the front camera or the back camera. And that's what makes the Insta360 X4 such a powerful tool for creators. It's very versatile, and you can use it in multiple different ways for different scenarios. Now, when it comes to 360 mode, of course, you could upload that spherical video to platforms such as YouTube, where people can just scroll around and look at all the different angles. But the more powerful way to use a 360 camera is when capturing spherical video, you can reframe the shot later on when you're editing, and that allows you to frame it exactly how you want it, whatever point of view you want. And on top of that, because of how it stitches the two halves together, the extension pole that you have attached to it becomes invisible, and it looks like there's just a camera floating out in front of you. And we're going to take a look at all that here coming up. But let's go ahead, we're going to power on the camera, and we're going to take a look at some of its functionality. We're going to start with a quick look at the interface and what everything is and how to access some of the options. To start off, on the right hand side up here, we have a battery icon to show us how much power is left in the camera. And we can actually touch that, and it will give us a percentage as well. On the left hand side here, it shows us how much recording time we have in a specific mode, and that will adjust depending on what mode you're in and what the resolutions and different settings are set at. If we go down near the bottom here, this will change depending on what filming mode you're in, but right now we're in 360 mode, so it's displaying information about that particular mode. And what it's showing us is a little camera icon. That means we're in video mode. It's showing us our resolution and the frame rate that we're capturing in. Beside that, we have a button that allows us to flip the view from front to back camera. It's not going to change what you're recording, just what you can preview on the screen. For example, if I press on that button, you can see it goes back and forth between the two cameras. Again, we're in spherical mode, so it's still going to capture all the way around us. Basically, it's just giving us a preview of the different lenses. And above that is our field of view. They have mega field of view, ultra, and de-warp. That all boils down to personal preference, and a lot of that can be changed while you're editing. For the most part, when I'm filming in 360, I just leave it in the mega field of view, and I adjust that while I'm reframing my video later on. And we are going to take a look at all that coming up here in a minute. But with that said, if you do decide to change your field of view, as you select each one, it does give you a description which each one is best suited for. Now we can adjust our filming parameters very easy. Right now you can see it's set at 5.7K at 30 frames per second. If we click on that, we can adjust it. We can set our resolution all the way up to 8K. That's going to give you the highest quality. And for most scenarios, that is going to be the best choice. Just remember, in 8K, it could cause a lot of heat to build up in the camera. So it's best to use it when the camera is moving, not if it's going to be sitting stationary for a long period of time. Also, in low light scenarios, you're best to switch down to 5.7K. That's going to give you better low light capabilities. Now, when it comes to changing modes, like say you want to go into photo mode and take a 360 photo, there's two different ways in which we can do it. We can click on that camera icon, and that's going to bring up all the different modes. Now, I'm not going to go through all the different modes in this video. We're going to stick to the basics just to get you up and running. I am going to be making more advanced tutorials of all these different modes later on. So you can see now I just switched to photo mode by tapping the icon. The other way to switch modes is by using the mode button. You can see when I press it, it will cycle through all the different modes. So that's the basic layout for 360 mode. Now, as mentioned, we can film in single lens mode, and that's where it's only going to use one lens at a time, and basically it's going to act like a traditional action camera. This thing can be mounted like regular action cameras, so you can get nice point of view shots. Mounted on a dirt bike, e-bike, mountain bike. You can mount it in your vehicle if you're doing some car vlogging. So it is very versatile in that aspect. To switch to the single lens mode, we're going to press that camera icon again where we would normally switch to the different filming modes. But up at the top here, you can see it gives us the option for 360 or single lens. So we're going to select single lens, and then you can pick whatever mode you want to be in. Again, we'll just leave it on video. So you can see the aspect has changed, and it's actually capturing from this front lens here. You can see as I put my fingers over it. And we can switch to the other lens just by pressing that button. And now it's going to be recording from the back lens. So that feature can be very useful depending on how you have it mounted. You can record facing you or away from you. And just like in 360 mode, we can adjust our resolutions. The highest quality resolution is going to be 4K, but we can go all the way down to 1080. We can also set our frames per second. For the most part, I'm always filming in 30 frames per second. However, if you do want to be able to slow your footage down a little bit by half, you can film in 60 frames per second. The other thing we can do from this screen is set our aspect ratio. By default, it's set to 16:9, so that's going to be landscape. But we can set that to a 9:16 if we're going to be filming for social media. And just like in 360 mode, we can set our field of view. Now, it's a little bit more important to set the proper field of view to what suits best for the scenario when filming in this mode, because for the most part, unlike 360 mode, you can adjust it. Once you film in that particular field of view, that's what it's in. So that's basically the difference between 360 and single lens mode. Now, we're going to take a look at some of the other options from within the main screen here. First of all, if we swipe down from the top, that's going to bring up all our settings. So there are a lot of different options in this menu system. Now, we're not going to get into them all in this video. There are a few that I'm going to show you as we go along throughout the tutorial. It's a good idea just to go through it and see what's all there. Now, there's nothing you need to adjust in there to use the camera right away. We get all those settings from swiping down from the top. But if we swipe over from the right-hand side, this is going to bring up our manual settings. So right now you can see we're in auto. We can switch it over to manual if we want to adjust things like our shutter speed, our ISO, white balance, and different things. Now, for most people, just leaving it in auto, you're going to have a perfectly exposed image. Everything is going to look good. One thing you may want to adjust is the color profile. By default, it is in standard, but you can choose vivid if you want it more colorful, or you can choose flat if you want to go in and do your own grading. For the most part, when I'm filming with my 360 cameras, I leave it in standard, and I can just adjust things slightly in the editor. Now, if we swipe over from the left-hand side, this is going to bring up our album gallery. So all the content that we have currently stored on the memory card. By default, it's just going to display the last video or photo that we've captured. And from here, we can play it. We can delete it. And if we click on this icon up in the left-hand corner, it's going to give us a grid view of everything that's on the memory card. From there, we can batch select several items, and again, delete it, add it to favorites, or send it over to a device, which we will take a look at here coming up. So just a nice way to get a preview of some of the content that you've shot. And one thing I should show you here that I forgot, and it's to do with these lens guards. When you have the lens guards installed, again, swipe down from the top, we have to turn that feature on. Because what it does is it adjusts the stitch line to make sure that it still looks good. So this icon here, the second one down on the left-hand side, from here we can set it to auto so it will detect whether we have lens guards on or not. Right now I have mine set to no lens guards. But you can also choose the standard lens guards or the premium ones. The ones that are included with the package are the standard lens guards. They do have a premium lens guard that is an optional purchase. They're just a higher quality glass. So you would just adjust it according to what kind of lens guards you have installed. So now let's talk about how to capture content with the Insta360 X4. There's 4 different ways in which we can capture. And it doesn't matter whether you're in 360 mode or in the 4K single lens mode, it works the same way for both. The first way and the most easiest way is just using the shutter button. As you can see, we can press record and it's going to start recording. Another press is going to stop recording. If we switch it over to photo mode, again, when we press the shutter button, it's going to go ahead and take a photo. And again, it doesn't matter if we're in single lens mode. We just switch to the back camera, and again, I can press the record button, and it's just going to record like a 4K camera. The second way to capture, whether 360 or in single lens mode, is voice control. Sometimes it's more convenient just to give the camera a command, but we do have to turn that on in the settings. If we swipe down from the top, you can see this icon here of a head with voice coming out of its mouth. We turn that on. That's going to enable all the voice commands. And if we scroll down, it's going to give us a list of the commands that we can say. And it doesn't matter what mode you're in, it'll automatically switch to the appropriate mode. So for example, right now we have that camera icon there, the video camera, so we're in video mode, but I can tell it to take a photo. You can see there it's automatically switched to photo mode and it went ahead and took a picture. And same thing, we're in photo mode now. It left us in photo mode, but I can tell it to start recording. Stop recording. Again, you can see it switched it over to video mode and started the recording. So I'm going to turn that off just for the time being so you don't accidentally trigger a recording or a photo, because sometimes that's the problem with voice command. It'll start recording or taking a photo when you don't mean it to. So I only turn mine on when I know I'm going to be using it. The next way is something called gesture control. Gesture control is actually really nice because a lot of times when you are using your 360 camera, it's mounted away from you on an extension pole, and perhaps you're in a noisy environment or you don't want to have to shout at the camera. You can just use a simple hand gesture, which is basically just putting your hand up like that. Now it's going to be kind of hard to demonstrate that. I might throw some B-roll over top just so you can see what I'm doing. But again, first we have to enable that. And there's a picture of a hand there. When we go to our settings, we can turn that on. And it gives us some of the gestures we can take, the palm and a peace sign to take a photo. So here's a little demonstration of using the hand gestures for stopping and starting recording. You can see I put my hand up and it's going to start recording. And then of course I can put my hand up again and it's going to stop recording. And the fourth way to capture is by using the remote. You can either use the Insta360 app on your smartphone as a remote, or Insta360 does sell optional remotes, so they can be handy in some scenarios as well. For example, this is the Insta360 preview remote. It comes with attachments to wear it as a watch, or you can strap it to handlebars of a bike. This will give you a preview. If the camera's mounted away from you and you can't see the screen, it'll show you what you're filming. You can adjust some basic settings and of course stop and start recording. So for some people, having a remote is going to be very beneficial as well. So I'll just show you a quick demonstration how useful it is using the Insta360 app as a remote. As you can see, we can get a live preview right on our phone. So it's a great way to line up shots, especially if the camera is not near you. The other interesting thing it does is it disables the screen on the camera when you're using this as a screen, which is nice because that saves battery power. We can adjust all our settings, change frame rate, resolution, we can switch to the different modes, and of course we can start and stop recording. So definitely a very useful tool in some situations. So those are the basic ways to start and stop recording, and it doesn't matter what mode you're in. I showed you in photo mode and video mode, but if you're capturing an HDR, a time lapse, time shift, you would use that shutter button to capture those styles of content as well. Now, one thing I do want to show you here quickly, and it's to do with the single lens mode. Like I said, we're going to keep this video just to the basics, but if we switch over to single lens mode, there's a feature in here called free frame video. Now, the difference of free frame mode compared to regular video mode when you're in the single lens mode is in the regular video mode, you're going to be recording a video and it's just completely ready to go. You don't have to do anything to it. It's just going to capture like a traditional camera. In free frame mode, a lot of the decisions can be made later on. For example, you can adjust the field of view later on. You can adjust the aspect ratio later on. So whether it's in a 16:9 or 9:16, that can be done in the app later when we upload it. And that's great for social media because you might want to film once and be able to export it at full resolution, either as a 16:9 or 9:16. In that free frame mode, you can do that without losing quality. Plus, you can adjust the field of view, again, without losing any quality. Those decisions can be made later. And we'll take a look at that when we get to the editing portion of this video. So I just wanted to touch base on that if you're wondering what the difference between the two is. And the nice thing about it is when you're filming in that mode, you can see it gives you this grid view and it will show you kind of what it's going to look like in an aspect ratio of 9:16 or 16:9. Which is really great for when you're framing your shots. Now, one thing I want to show you here before we get into the editing portion of this video is this button here on the side. That brings up pre-made settings. For example, when we press it, you can see we have motorcycling, we have skiing, outdoors, and then a plus sign. So Insta360 has included those default ones. You know, there are settings that are good for those activities. You can use that button down there at the bottom to adjust the settings if there's something that you want changed. Or you can hit the plus sign and you can create your own custom modes. Now that's more advanced settings. Not everybody uses these custom modes. But if you do want to create your own custom modes for settings that you use on a regular basis, that's how you would do it. So at this point, we're going to talk about previewing the content on our mobile devices and transferring content. Now, the nice thing about the X series is that we don't have to transfer the content over to the device to edit it. And that can be very beneficial because sometimes these devices have limited memory and it can fill up very quick if we're transferring everything over. If you have lots of storage, that might be something you want to do, but it is not necessary. But I'm going to show you both methods here. So what we're going to do is connect to the Wi-Fi of the camera. And it's a very simple procedure. It's the same way as we did it at the beginning when we were connecting to the camera to update the firmware. There's two ways we can trigger that. We can click on that camera icon so the camera connects. Or if we go over to our album and we click on camera, there's a button there that says press to connect. So we are going to connect to it. And if you've already had that device connected to the camera, it won't ask you, but here it's asking me to confirm the connection on the camera. That's usually only something you have to do once. From there, it's going to ask us to join the Wi-Fi network. Once it's connected, it's going to go ahead and display all the content from the camera's memory card. And you can see they look a little different. These ones are circles, these ones are squares. And basically that dictates whether it's a spherical video, a 360 video, or a single lens video. And from there, it'll give you even more information. It might be kind of hard to see on film, but down in the bottom left-hand corner, it has little icons of the different modes it was captured in. So if you've captured a time lapse, a hyperlapse, or as I showed you that freeframe video, it'll show you a little icon of it so you know exactly what type of content that is. And at the top, you can also filter it between the different types of media. We can choose videos, photos, standard video, me mode, time shift, and free frame video. So that way, if you have a lot of content on there, it's easy to filter out and find exactly what you're looking for. And at the top here, you can see we have camera selected, so it's only showing us what's on the camera's memory card. If we've already had content transferred over to the device, we can click on download. And this is all content that has already been transferred over from previous sessions. If you've had any content favorited, there's a tab there for that as well. So again, that can make it easy to find content. But let's go back to camera here. And again, this is all the content being read directly wirelessly from the camera's memory card. Now at this point, we can preview all the files. We can click on it and we can scrub through. And again, it's streaming it right from the camera. We haven't copied anything over yet. And just keep in mind that this is going to be a low resolution preview, so it's not going to look as good as the final rendered product. They just keep it low res just so it's easy to manage and scrub through. And of course, from that same page, when I tap on the video, it gives us all our video editing tools there. And that's where I said we can do all the editing. We can trim the video, we can add effects. We can do that without having to transfer the content. So if we have, say, a 10-minute video file, but we only want a 30-second clip that we're going to upload to something like TikTok or YouTube Shorts, we could trim that 10-second video, and that's all we're going to render out. So that's going to save a lot of space on your device. It works extremely well and it's very fluid. Just keep in mind though that you are going to be using battery power on the camera. So sometimes that's not always convenient. You might have limited power left in your battery, but you want a session of editing. At that point, it might be best just to transfer some of the content over to your tablet or iPhone or whatever you're going to be editing on. And to do so is very easy. Again, we're still under camera, so this is all the content from the memory card. I can select that icon there at the top, right-hand side, and then I can select which videos I want to download to the device. Once we've selected the ones we want, I can click that button down at the bottom. So what it's doing now is transferring everything over wirelessly, and it will give you a progress bar on the video files. Up at the top here, if we click on that, again, it's going to give you some progress on how things are transferring. And if you've changed your mind, you can just remove them from the queue or cancel it altogether. And then as mentioned, once you've transferred content, it'll be in your downloaded gallery. So you can go in and do your editing and then export it. So now at this point, let's go over some editing techniques on how to export our 360 videos so we can share them to social media. And again, I'm not going to go over every detail because there's a lot we can do with this app. I'm going to make more specific tutorials for some of the more advanced editing features. So let's go ahead here and we're going to pick a video. I'm going to start with this one here. Now this is a spherical video, so that means we can scroll around to many different angles. That's kind of the beauty of 360. We can pinch to zoom out. We can zoom in. We can do all kinds of crazy effects. But what we can also do here is set our aspect ratio. Right now you can see it is a 9:16, which is really the format we want if we're going to be uploading to social media. things like TikTok, Instagram Reels, or YouTube Shorts. But we can change that aspect if we want it more of a traditional 16:9. You can see it gives us some different options here. So let's select 16:9, and there we go. The other thing we can do is trim it. This is a 6-minute video, but we may only want a small clip. So what we can do is hit the trim button, and then we have handles at the beginning and at the end, and we can trim it to whatever length we want, and we just confirm that with the check mark there. Now at this point we could just go ahead and export it, but we haven't set any parameters yet. So say we want a view like this, and we were just to go ahead and hit the export button, doesn't mean that's the view it's going to export. So we have to tell it what angle we want, basically reframe it the way we want. We can tell it what kind of field of view we want. Do we want it zoomed way out? Do we want it zoomed way in? And we can do that in a few different ways. You can see at the top here, we have AI, Quick, and Pro. In Pro mode, basically we're going to set keyframes along the video, setting the camera angle and other information. And it is super easy to do. Sometimes keyframes can sound a little intimidating, but I'll just show you how easy it is to do doing it manually. And then we're going to take a look at how to do it automatically. We're going to show you both ways here. But the Pro way first, setting keyframes, all we have to do is go to the beginning of the video, set the video the way you want it. Then we're going to hit the plus button. And if we move along here, you can see it's put a little dot there. That's our first keyframe. And that's the way the camera is pointed. That's what's going to be in the video. And we can keep going along here. But say we find we're getting a little bit off center because the camera angle is changing, like right there a little bit. I can pull it back, put it more in the center. I can then add another keyframe. So between these two keyframes, that's the way the camera is going to point. But say let's keep going along here, but now I want a tighter shot. I can zoom in, adjust the camera a little bit, and add another keyframe. And you're going to notice here, if we scroll through, there it's a far back zoomed out shot, but as we go to that next keyframe, you can see it zooming in, giving us a tighter shot. But now say we don't like that, we want it back to a zoomed out shot, so we can just zoom out to get it to where we want it, but then we have to hit this button here, Update Keyframe. That's going to update the specific information of that keyframe that we just changed. The other thing we can do is select a keyframe, and you can see it turns to an X. So if we added one accidentally, we can just click on that X and that will delete it. So at this point, you just go through the video. You might want to have the camera flip around to the front, just like that there. So you'll notice what happens there now that we changed the camera angle. From this keyframe, if we scroll along, you can see that it's going to slowly rotate until it gets to that next keyframe. And you can see that a little more evident when I play it back. Now the only problem there is I had quite a bit of distance between the two keyframes, so it's kind of slow and it just looks kind of weird the way that worked. You know, you're getting distorted there. So the better way to do it is make sure if you want to change camera angles, you can do it a little bit quicker. So let me delete that keyframe. I'll select it. We'll go back to that first one. And then I'm just going to scroll a little bit to about there. I'm going to spin the camera around and then add the keyframe. So now when we play it back, you'll see it'll switch a lot quicker and just look a little bit better. Just like that. So it's just a matter of going through setting your keyframes and setting the angle the way you like it. And there's a lot more we can do in here. As mentioned, I'm not going to get into it all in this video, but we can adjust the speed of the playback. We can add motion, that adds a nice effect. We can adjust the color. Another interesting feature they have is something called multi-view. You can see there it's giving us split views, so we can have a picture of us and a picture facing forward. So you can do a lot of different effects. Now at this point, once you've set all your keyframes, we can hit the export button, set our parameters for resolution. I like to always export it at 4K, 30 frames per second, and I always leave the bit rate up. It's going to take a little bit longer, but it's going to give you the highest quality. We would just hit export, and then it's going to be in the camera roll of the device, a flat video that you can now share to social media. So as you can see, reframing with keyframes in the Insta360 app is extremely easy. It's actually my preferred method. I find it gives you the most creative control. Now going to the complete opposite, if you want to just export a spherical video as a spherical video, that is simple enough to do. All you have to do is bring up your video. You can do some minor tweaking to it, adjust the color, you can trim it up. The only difference is when you go to export it, at the top here, instead of having flat selected, which is going to export a traditional video, we're going to select 360. You just hit the export button, and then from there you can share it to social media or platforms that support spherical video. So now when it comes to exporting spherical video as flat videos, we took a look at keyframing. Now we're going to look at a couple other methods that you can use to reframe your spherical video and export it as flat. One nice way to do that is tracking. For example, I've got another video here. This is a spherical video. And sometimes when you've got a camera mounted and you're moving in different directions, the subject you want isn't always going to remain perfectly in the center. The camera view could be spinning around. So again, we could go in and manually keyframe it to keep us in the center. And it doesn't have to be just us, any object really. But an automatic way to do it is tracking. And there's a couple different ways we can do it. First off, you can see we have this green box right above my head here. That means the software has picked up a trackable object, which is myself. So all I have to do is click on that box, and you can see right now it's going to go through and do the tracking, keeping me centered. It does a really good job, keeps the horizon nice and level. It can take some time depending on how long the video is, and at any given time you can press that button there to stop the tracking. I'll just let it play through and then we'll take a look at the results at the end. So you can see it's done tracking. Now we can go ahead and play that, and you can see it is perfectly aligned. Of course, now at this point we can go in and do some other tweaking, make some other edits, and then go ahead and export it as a flat video when we're done. You know this footage has been tracked because it's now green. We've got this kind of green overlay over the timeline. But we can click on that and we can adjust these handles here at the beginning and the end for the portions that we want it automatically traced, because we might want to go and do something different at the beginning there. We may want to do some manual keyframes before it goes into the automatic tracking. The other thing we can do again is click on it, and right here, I don't know if you can see that on film, but there's a little icon of a garbage can. We can delete that, so that way it's deleted all the tracking information. Now another way to track is by highlighting the object manually by drawing a box around it. And that could be beneficial if for some reason it doesn't pick you up as a trackable object, or you want to track something else like a building or a monument. You can draw a box around it and it works exactly the same way. Now, in order to draw a box, you can see if I try to draw a box around myself, it's just moving the camera around. So what we have to do is press and hold first. That's going to kind of lock everything. And then I can draw a box. Now it's probably hard to see the box on camera, but there's a really thin green line around me. And it works exactly the same way. All we have to do is hit start tracking. And it's going to go through the video and keep me centered, or whatever you've selected centered. And it doesn't matter which way you're moving or the camera's moving. The object that you highlighted will always stay in the center as a point of interest. I'm just going to go ahead there and we're going to delete that tracking information, because there's one last way I want to show you quickly here how you can reframe your content. And it's under the quick tab here. Basically with this method, we're going to move the device to get the angles we want. For example, I don't know if you can see that, hopefully it's displaying. As I'm moving my iPad around, the point of view of the camera is changing. So what we can do here is hit the record button, and it's playing through the video but also recording the data, things that we're inputting. So as you can see, as I move the device around, that's the information that's going to be recorded. So we can stop that. The other way you can do it, instead of moving the tablet around, we can use this virtual joystick. So we can do some pretty interesting things. And get really creative and make some nice smooth transitions. Now moving along here, earlier on in this tutorial we talked about free frame video. Now I'm going to bring up an example here. This is a shot that I filmed in free frame mode. And unlike traditional video, which is fixed, once you film it, that's what you have, we can make some adjustments to this. The first thing we can do is set our field of view. Right now I have it on dewarp, which is going to get rid of a lot of the distortion, but it's going to be a tighter shot. We can go to max. You can see we have a much bigger field of view, but we do get a little bit of distortion. So it just really depends on what the situation is. Sometimes you want that nice wide field of view and a bit of distortion is okay. Other times you want to maybe use the dewarp, but they have other fields of view as well that might be more suited to what you're filming. So you just have to play around with them to see what you like. The other thing we can do is set the aspect ratio. Again, right now we are at 16:9, but we can go to a 9:16. And as I showed you earlier on in this tutorial, as you're filming on the back of the camera, it'll kind of give you a preview of what each aspect ratio is going to look like. And then again, we can do some other minor editing. We can trim, edit our colors, add some sound, adjust the speed. And then just like 360 video, when we're done, we hit the export. Right now it's saying quick export, but I want to do custom. That way we can up the resolution. And again, I always put it to the max bitrate just so we have the best quality. And then again, we just go and export. Now, one last thing I do want to show you here, and I want to show you an example, is me mode. Now, me mode is a really interesting mode, and it can be very useful in some situations. And it is located under the single lens mode. It's that icon there. It's called me mode. And it's really interesting because although it's going to be using both cameras, when it's done recording, you're going to be left with a traditional flat video. But it uses both lenses, so it can look for you, and it's going to keep you centered in the frame. It's a nice quick way to get those shots that we were doing where we're centered, left centered, but you don't have to do any reframing or editing. Everything is going to be done on camera. It's going to detect you. And when you're done recording, you've got a traditional 16:9 or 9:16, but a flat video with you perfectly centered. And I'll just show you a quick example. This video here was filmed in me mode. And you can see it's kept me perfectly in the center of the frame. And it doesn't matter how you hold the camera, it's going to automatically keep you centered. So it's a nice quick way to get some video without having to do any reframing. And just like freeform mode, we can come in and do some minor editing, change the field of view, change the aspect ratio. And with this me mode, what's new this year with the X4 is we can actually export it as 4K video. With the X3, the previous model, it would only let us export at maximum 1080 resolution. So that's really a nice new upgrade. So yeah, folks, that is a basic look at the Insta360 X4 and the Insta360 app. They also have an app for desktop if you prefer to edit on a PC or Mac. It's a really good app. It's not quite as robust, feature-rich as the mobile app. There are a few features that are missing, but it is really nice to use, and some people do prefer to edit on a computer. Now, as mentioned, I'm going to be making several videos over the coming weeks and months, diving in a little bit deeper to some more advanced features and functionality. So if you are going to be new to the Insta360 X4, make sure you're subscribed, and that way you can see when I post new videos and new tutorials. I want to thank you for taking the time to watch this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it and found it had value. Give it a thumbs up if you did. It's always greatly appreciated, and we'll see you in the next one.